Welcome to Beyond Names. I'm Dr. Habib. This is a space for spiritual seekers and soulful misfits, for the curious and the committed, for those grounded in a tradition, and for those who are not sure what they believe. Whether you call the divine Yahweh, God, Allah, Elohim, Hashem, Brahman, Spirit, Source, Great Mystery, Ultimate Reality, Higher Power, or you're still searching for language that fits, you are welcome here. Together, we'll explore the intersection of spirituality and daily life, the wisdom of many traditions, and the ways we return to our true selves, to our source, to the light that each of us carry within. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin with introduction of our conversation partner for this episode, Nura Laird. Nura is co-chair of the Department of Peacemaking and a faculty member at the University of Sufism. She has been a student of spiritual healing and Sufism since 1977. She brings deep experience in mediation, teaching, counseling, and healing. She leads retreats and workshops internationally, helping individuals, marriages, and families cultivate health, love, and peace. And she's especially passionate about not only peacemaking, but social justice. So, Nura, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, Habib. I'm honored to be here.
Alhamdulillah. So, if you would please introduce yourself to our listeners by way of sharing your spiritual story.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. It's not something that I've put together as a story, so this is going to be a rough draft.
Perfect.
Um, as Habib said, I love the term spiritual misfit. I don't feel like that anymore, but I think most of my life I did.
Hmm.
Um, Now the misfit has become normalized. Um, in my childhood and youth, I was never happy with being explained things on the simply on the outer. I didn't know it cognitively the way I know it now looking back, but I was always looking for the truth behind something, and I always knew there was more.
Mhm.
And finally, in high school, I discovered Carl Jung. And well, I grew up Jewish, I should say that. And my family left two synagogues for the reason that in both cases, the rabbis seemed to be against the US policy in Vietnam, but they wouldn't come out about it publicly. They only came about it privately to my mom. And
Mhm.
so my mom pulled the family out of one and then another synagogue for the same reason. And that was the end of synagogue for us.
Mhm.
Um, I did go to Hebrew school for 5 years. I was highly trained in Hebrew and the religion. And anyway, I don't think of that part of my life now as a major part of my life.
Mhm.
So in back to high school, I discovered Carl Jung and I just savored as much as I could and just felt like he was speaking to my deeper self that nothing else in my life was speaking to. And later I learned the word mystic. And then I realized, I guess that's what I was. And then soon after that, he led me to Alan Watts and Teilhard de Chardin, so Christian mystics, Buddhists. So that was a lot of my exploration. And I think the deeper meaning that mysticism gives you is such a gift. And I think that's what I was always seeking and mostly nourished by. And I think that's why Rumi and then later official Sufism met such a deep need for me. The Sufism that I was first introduced to was a form that's kind of it's termed universal Sufism. It wasn't nested within Islam in
Mhm.
77. And even though from my point of view now, I feel like what we have now is the whole package, I didn't know then that it wasn't. And it
Mhm.
was what was good for me then. I don't think I was ready for the whole package till later in my life.
Yeah.
And yet, I really treasure my early teacher and the teachings I got at that time, because not only did it help me understand the deeper meaning of things, but it helped me to relate to people as soul, which was so satisfying. We lived in a Sufi community for
Mhm.
8 years. And despite difficulties in relationships with each other there and some real craziness, like even clinical craziness among some of the members of our community, when
Mhm.
we would have our Sufi practices and Sufi dancing, which at that time was a very sacred practice, soul was what we were all in touch with. And it put a balm, 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 over everything that was hard with each other in everyday life. And I really treasure that. And I also got introduced to Ibn al-Arabi then, and to unity. And I don't think at that time I knew the unity of La ilaha illallah
Mhm.
to the point that I think I do now. And I think it's always going to be a work in progress. But I know that it planted seeds of wanting to create bridges with people, unity in that sense, which then mediation came in soon after that, which was a perfect venue for creating bridges between people who are having differences. So anyway, we were with that teacher we lived there for 8 years. I was with him as a student for much longer than that, and just continued that path, taught it to our children. They were born in that community, literally. They spent their first few years there. And then in the late 90s, one of my healing teachers, Dr. Jaffe, told us about this Palestinian Sufi sheikh who was going to be teaching nearby where we lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We went to see him out of curiosity. And first impression, I'll never forget.
Mhm.
I was aware of the light around him. And the way it landed for me was that God was present and emitting from that light everywhere, 360. And I couldn't talk about it the way I am now. At that time, I didn't really have the words, but I saw what it meant to me was his commitment to God. And at the time, I thought I was. It's embarrassing. Uh, anyway, sometimes comparison can be really healthy. And it really made me want to step up.
Mhm.
So, not knowing him much or anything, and having barely listened to his teachings at that point, I went up to him and said, I was in my 50s. I must have sounded like a 3-year-old. I was like, I want to be like you when I grow up. That's when I said, because English wasn't his first language and he didn't have a lot of English. I just said to him, how can I be more like you? And I meant in that commitment.
Mhm.
And he told me to do this formal ceremony to enter his way with another teacher. And I said no. At the time, I didn't know anything. So I didn't know you don't say no to your teacher, but he wasn't my teacher yet. I was just so naive.
Yeah.
And a few weeks later, I flew out from Santa Fe to California, where he stayed most of the time when he was in this country. He stayed with his kids. And I took the promise with him and became officially his student. And that was in like 97 or 98. So that's been my path since then. And the as you know, the Islam came in slowly. He gave it to us slowly. He
Mhm.
gave us the kind of stuff that I always loved, the deeper meaning behind things.
Mhm.
And so, and the love, and started to give me a sense of what the unity was really about, which was way bigger, deeper, higher, everything more than I had any idea of. And so
Mhm.
little by little, I was reading his books and he taught us to write them. In the beginning, when he first told us that, I grew up being told that this is so embarrassing. I grew up being told that the Chinese were primitive and that their education was primitive. The children learned by rote, by writing what was in their texts. So that was my stereotype when he told us to write his books. But then once I gave myself a chance to start, I realized what that's about. And there's so much in it. There's just a whole world in it. I still do it. It's still one of my favorite of all the practices that we do because his spirit and the spirit of the divine come through the words, through my pen, through my arm, into my heart, and it changes my state. And as I do it, I come to understand things in the text that last time I read it, I didn't understand. I put question marks in the margins. And then I sometimes am rereading and get to cross out my question marks. It's like, oh, now I get what he's talking about.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, and I teach from those books, and it's those teachings are everything. I think my whole life revolves around those teachings and around my spiritual practice. I mean, I think that Wadud, my husband, and I both think that we live our lives on a daily basis as best as we can as students of Sufism and students of Islam. And there's always need for more. It's definitely a work in progress, but that's my commitment. And at this age in my life, it feels very solid, and I'm not looking for anything else. I'm not searching. I don't want to say I've found what I wanted, because as we say in Sufism, the horizon recedes as you approach it. So, but I have a deep contentment, deep in my heart. So that's kind of an overview. I hope that wasn't too long.
Not at all. It's so nice to hear that you're ending your spiritual story with saying that you have deep contentment in your heart. So one of the things that
That's just in my deep heart. There's a lot of other stuff further out
yes.
that's stirred up sometimes. Yeah, just wanted to clarify so nobody gets the wrong impression.
You're still human. That's what you're saying. You still have human thoughts and human emotions.
God created us imperfect.
Yes.
I accept that.
Yeah. So you know me well enough to know that I've struggled with health challenges. Uh, and
Oh,
one of the things that am, that just really resonated with me is you're saying that you and Wadu to do your best to live your life as students of Islam and Sufism. And you said you referenced at this age. And I want to hear more about, have you been able to let go of those things that seemed so distracting throughout your life? Like, have you been ever able to let go of the potency of, say, the emotional experience or the physical experience, or or even just entertainment? Like, there's so many things in our world that are targeting our culture in the States that are targeted toward distracting us and keeping us scrolling or streaming, or like, have you experienced that stuff has reduced its appeal and its strength?
yeah, that's a really great question. I love that. And it's something that I'll sit with longer than this time interview.
Mm,
Um, I think the balance is more tipped because it's easier for me to leave the attachments and go back inside to that presence with a capital P.
mm,
The transition has become easier and quicker most of the time. There are times when I get caught with fear. Um, it mostly revolves around what's happening in our world. And I'm allowing myself to be in touch with unsafety on
mm,
behalf of others and myself, ourselves. Um, I didn't used to let myself be in touch with unsafety, and I would see it in other people, and it was like, what are they talking about? And now I realize it was veiled from me, and I was in denial about it.
mm,
And it feels refreshing to allow myself to feel it. Actually, I feel it's refreshing to feel all the feelings that I feel, and our family culture is like that. We
mm,
have an open door to feeling our feelings. Of course, how we express them is a different thing, but everybody's encouraged and given respect and deep holding in any feeling that we have. Everybody, meaning me and Dude and our two kids who are in their 40s. Um, and my grandson, at the end of the World Cup game on Sunday, he really wanted Argentina. He's about 10, and Messi is his idol, and he's a soccer player. And it was really interesting to watch my daughter because as the game was coming to an end in overtime, he was just really more upset than I've ever seen him. And he was
mhm.
swearing and going, ah, and, like screeching a little bit and then crying. And then when it was all over, he just cried his heart out. And
Mhm.
I was totally comfortable with it. And I was watching my daughter be a mom. And I just, inside, I was smiling because she was really giving him the space to have the feeling. And and then I watched how she was gradually, after he had had a certain amount of time that I guess she deemed was the right amount, transitioning him and helping him find the silver lining. And I was watching very carefully because I get really upset if somebody makes somebody discover the silver lining before they're ready. To me,
Mhm.
it's pasting
Mhm.
positivity on something where it's not. But anyway, that's just a little snippet about the emotions. So for me, yeah, I get caught. The body stuff, I'm 78, and the body stuff, I really accept it.
Mhm.
And I love being this age. The body stuff is maybe the hardest. And meanwhile, I'm blessed compared to most people because my body stuff is not serious. It's just uncomfortable sometimes.
Mhm.
So that does distract me, including during prayer. That
Mhm.
distracts me really more than anything during prayer. But I understand how the shaitan, the darkness, works to distract us during prayer. So I know what to do,
Mhm.
to get back on track and get back with the presence. I have to do it multiple times during prayer. So, yeah,
Mhm.
the body stuff, the emotions, I mean, as I kind of implied, yeah, I feel them. I get caught sometimes. And mostly I'm just not upset about that. I just feel that's my humanity and it's okay.
Mhm.
The internet stuff and the scrolling is not really that much a part of my life like it is for most people. There
Mhm.
are some days where I might find myself for a half an hour doing that on a thread that's got the kind of news and messages that I care about that have to do with justice and peace and equity and anti-racism, things that are really important to me. Um,
Mhm.
but social media, very little. I'm not on Facebook or anything. Every
Mhm.
once in a while, I dip in there to see what my daughter wrote because I really respect what she writes and respect her and her cleverness and what she cares about. So, yeah, I think the key is the transition. You
Mhm.
know, at what point do we catch ourselves and transition back to that deeper place of peace and presence inside? And I feel like that's getting easier for me.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question?
Mhm. Yes, and I think
Oh,
the question comes from the place of my personal struggle. Like you of course we share a spiritual guide in Sidi Muhammad al-Jamal, and in Secrets of the Heart, he talks about the importance of being aware of our thoughts and what's going on with our thoughts and how the thoughts, if left to their own, can lead us. They can either lead us to our animal nature or to our angelic nature, one or the other. And so the importance of engaging in remembrance of God, in remembrance of the law, as this sort of constant thing that's incumbent upon humans. That part of humanity is you have to watch your thoughts and you have to be in remembrance of the law to keep, basically it's like self-management. It's like self-care 101, like self-care 101, like compassionate self-witnessing and taking whatever you're witnessing to the divine.
Yes,
And
yes, yes, exclamation point.
yes, exclamation point. And I feel like I'm still not good at it. Like I feel like, I've been walking this path for however many years and doing these practices for however many years. And I still feel like I'm not doing a very good job at it, which is it is I think that's kind of where that question comes from.
It depends on what you're comparing it to. I mean, being in constant remembrance, I don't think I'll ever get there even before I die, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Allah will give it to me, but yes, I'm distracted all the time during Salat. And I remember one of our teachers, I don't want to mention his name, but he was the one who was from Virginia, told us one time that he's hardly had any time in his whole life, and he was on the path probably 3 times longer than I was. He hardly
Mhm.
had any time in his whole life where he went through a prayer without getting distracted multiple times. And that was comforting. And I don't know if you ever heard of it, but Wadud taught a class called the Good Enough Sufi Syndrome. No, not the not good enough Sufi syndrome.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
have the notes from that class. It's such a great phrase, the not good enough Sufi syndrome. I
yeah.
think any path that has a high bar,
Hmm.
it draws people who have really deep sincerity and authenticity and really want to aim high.
Hmm.
And I think other paths like athletics and, there's other things, maybe even medicine, are like that, where it's a path that inherently pulls people into doing the absolute best they can, and
Yeah,
they're going to feel most of the time it's not good enough, probably. And I
right.
think that's innate in our path. And so I feel like we have an innate comparison to some ideal that might not even be realistic. I mean, we read the portraits of the old Sufi saints and the prophets and everything, and then you read. I really pay attention to the stories of the prophets. Like there's a couple places in the stories of Moses in the
Hmm.
Quran. And I also read Muhammad Assad's message of the Quran in his footnotes, which is like a tafsir explanation. And I've been teaching from this lately, so it's kind of fresh in my memory. Like at the time when Allah told him to throw down, he was with the Pharaoh, the magicians
Hmm.
threw down their stakes, they turned into snakes. Musa saw them, and then Allah says, now throw down your staff, and it's going to turn into a snake. Well, he didn't know it was going to turn into a snake and gobble up the others. But, Allah said, I'm with you. But Muhammad Assad says, in that moment where he's looking at their snakes and he hasn't thrown his staff down yet, he's
Hmm.
scared.
Yeah.
He's scared, like he's a human being. And the same thing happened with the Red Sea, according to Muhammad Assad,
Hmm.
that right before, he's standing there with these throngs of Jews behind him, and the Pharaoh and all his people are way behind them. And they're, it's the ocean. And God says, just go, take them in. And he doesn't know what's going to happen. He doesn't know it's going to part. Then it parts. There's huge walls of waves on either side. And even then, he's like, really? You
Right.
know, and I
Yeah.
think it's just, I'm sure, and we know that Ayub, Job had, just went through hell inside,
Yeah.
trying to hold on to his faith by a hair on his chin, And so I feel like when we feel like we're falling short, it's just an inevitable aspect of our humanity. And we're striving to do better. And we can't always measure it,
Yeah.
like from 1 month to the next or from 1 year to the next. I can't necessarily say it's different. I know I go through phases where I'm like, ooh, this is really good. I'm accessing the emptiness really well. And then Allah fills it with the presence. But that'll be a phase. I have no idea how long. I don't know what brought it on. It certainly wasn't my effort or anything.
Yeah.
It's just a gift from Allah. And then when it's taken, it's like, okay, hopefully it comes back someday,
Mhm.
And so I don't know if this is speaking to what you're talking about, but it just, yes, I have those things that you're talking about. And I think it has to do with the way I see it. And the biggest way I see it, which has just been coming in the last few years, is Jamal Jalal. So the ease and the difficulty. So it used to be when I was struggling with my thoughts or with myself or what I thought of myself or my words or my actions. And, later I felt bad. It would be all, I feel bad about what I did.
Mhm.
And Allah wasn't in the equation back then.
Mhm.
And so then I'm trying to make myself better, which is self reliance. Now, what you alluded to is self reliance, but within the larger container of Allah's will, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
So those things can work together. But back then, it wasn't working together. It was me trying to be better, trying
Mhm.
not to do an action like that, trying not to talk like that, trying not to feel depressed, trying not to see the glass half empty, whatever it was. Now, how I look at that stuff is Allah's either got me in a contraction or an expansion or the Kamal in the middle. And either in those moments or right after those moments, I'm like, okay, that was that. That was a contraction. I
Mhm.
was feeling scared for a while, or I
Yeah.
was feeling down for a day, or I was feeling up and I was feeling good.
Yeah.
And either way, it was an expansion or a contraction. And then that in between place, the Kamal, which we might also call a Barzakh, it's like the slack in the tide. It's not ebbing and it's not going in, it's not going out. There's the time period where it's right in the middle before it starts moving in the other direction. That's in between the Jamal and Jalal. And those are easier because there's no pressure. It's just kind of empty. And,
Yeah.
if you don't think about what's coming next, there's no striving, there's nothing to do, except just be. And so
Yeah.
I think I'm just trying to be in the contraction expansion, knowing they're both coming from Allah in that moment and that it'll change and that it's not because I did anything wrong, but that's not omitting the fact that I have responsibility and that I'm always trying to do better.
Mhm. Mhm.
But that's not the heaviest emphasis anymore. The heavier emphasis now is Allah's got me in that place,
Yeah.
including more distracted, more fearful, more tired, more achy,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, all those things that we think of as negative are equal now to me too. That's where Allah's got me now, and it will change.
Mhm.
So I think it's different from before where I put it all on me and felt bad, and then that made me feel even worse. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So does that address what you're bringing up?
It does. Uh, I I think we all struggle to accept what it is to be human. Um, Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that it's not easy to have the thoughts to, as if we have had, we've all humans have had some kind of trauma, some levels of trauma. So we all have the past rearing its ugly head at times, or we all have difficulties, whether it's in our relationships or whether it's in our health or whether it's the greater difficulties that we are working, excuse me, that we are experiencing in our world and our brothers and sisters of humanity. Like there's like pain and difficulty and hardship is just part of the experience. And I think that we struggle to accept that. I personally struggle to not let the experience of hardship turned me away from Allah, and
Mm,
to to open to um, the experience of difficulty as being something that is actually beautiful and valuable. Um, and I've been working with the prayer, Imam Hussein. I understand that his prayer before he was martyred was something along the lines of, Allah, you are my strength in every distress and my hope in every trial.
mhm.
And so I've been trying to respond to whether it's like waking up from another bad dream about childhood trauma, or whether it's physical failings or pain, or whatever the case might be. I've been trying to respond with, Allah, you alone are my strength in every distress, my hope in every trial. Please help me accept this state and help me go through it and grow through it to unveil the essence and realize my intimacy with you.
I'm glad you said realize my intimacy with you. I hope that you're implying that you know that Allah is always near, even when you don't realize it.
Exactly. Yes. And Allah's love is always near, even when I can't feel it.
Exactly, that's what I mean. And CD
Yes.
says in a couple places in his books, when we're brokenhearted,
Right.
including when we're brokenhearted about our spiritual journey, that's when Allah holds us closest. And I say that to myself, and I say it to other people when they're brokenhearted and they're just crumbling. They can't feel it. And that doesn't matter because it's a matter of how it's Allah's perspective that matters.
Right.
We think our perspective doesn't override Allah's. Allah's holding us closest when we're totally a mess, when we're crumbling,
Yeah.
because of Allah's love for us. And that matters more than the fact that actually matters more than the fact that I can't feel that right then,
Right.
even though it's an idea and it's not a felt reality in that moment. But I think knowing that and really having that internally, like in your flesh and bones, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just one of those, it feels like a paradox. And
Right.
there's a lot of paradoxes um, in the truth.
Yeah.
And I used to struggle with paradoxes because I wanted it to be one way or the other, you know.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
now this is one thing I like about being old. Like I kind of like and am intrigued by paradox now.
Mm, mm,
I
yeah.
mean, there's certain things that I wish were one way or the other. Like I wish some people thought the way I do about certain things, like capital punishment and other things that I care a lot about.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a lot of the paradoxes that I'm not struggling with anymore and finding myself, I'm over here and it's over there and never the twain shall meet. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things about being old that I really like.
Mm,
The only thing that's hard about it sometimes is the physical, but
yeah.
everything else is really good.
Yeah.
And it's not like when I was younger, I didn't have any physical stuff, but I do have more now. But
Yeah.
I just think it's important. I don't even know if I have any more words to it that I know when I'm in that place of devastation, it doesn't happen very much anymore.
Mm,
But I understand it because I have felt it.
mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean what I think it means. I
Yeah.
know the truth. I know the teaching. I believe it. And it's okay that I can't feel it in that moment. And the
Right.
truth is that Allah is always closer than my jugular vein. And particularly when I'm crumbling and devastated, Allah's got me, even when I can't feel it.
Yeah.
It's just like in a human way, like if we're really falling apart and sobbing and can barely even talk, and somebody's saying, I got you, I got your back, or they're even holding us, it might feel good, but it might not make a dent in the devastation,
Mm-hmm.
but it's there.
Yeah.
So even if it doesn't make a dent, it's still part of the picture, the bigger picture of where I am. So, I mean, like the other day watching Isaac sobbing about the game and, Sarah just being there so right with him, immediate, like not cringing at all at his swearing and his sobbing and his, wanting to die practically. He's just a little kid, and she was just like right with him. He couldn't feel it. It didn't comfort him, but she didn't leave him either. And there's something in that, it might be subconscious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when we were little, our parents, everybody ditched us. You weren't allowed to be that way. So
Right.
yeah, lots of people left us in all kinds of states, but that's not what Allah does.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's just, I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but I do feel like it's part of the walking, not just for me, but for all of us to realize that there's value in our neediness. And
Yeah.
so when we have these experiences that are so difficult, rather than view them from the through the lens of difficulty, to view them through the lens of neediness that actually is valuable in terms of us releasing those barriers that keep us from feeling laws withness with the I'm not sure what the proper word is, but feeling that Allah is with us, feeling that we are loved and held unconditionally in mercy and compassion by our sustaining Lord. Uh,
I'm so glad you brought up neediness because that's a big piece in my radar screen. I think it's really important. And I just wasn't using the word when I said desperate and crumbling and falling apart, but that's a big part of it. And I think part of the reason that we have so much trouble feeling Allah's presence in that moment is because we have such a strong idea that we should not be needy. Because
mm,
when we were as kids, we were trained that it was bad,
right, right,
or if somebody else was really needy, like a parent or something, and we're the kid, but we're supposed to be able to be the kid, but the parent's really needy. So are we supposed to parent the parent? And, there's so much stuff around need.
sure,
And I didn't see it until I got challenged in the mirror with the mirrors of students who were super needy. And I was finding myself repulsed. And
mm,
Allah sent them to me more than to any other teacher. And I had to do a lot of my own work on what's the mirror here and what's Allah trying to show me. And it took a long time. And I finally found that place in me. And at
mm,
first, I didn't like it at all. It was like I called it the wimp. And I had such a judgment of it. And it took a
mm,
long time, many, many healings to really get that this is part of my humanity. It's okay. It's not the way I think of it. It's not really the way it appears to me.
right,
Weak is part of our nature. Like you're saying, Allah created us that way.
right,
Our whole relationship with Allah is based on needing Allah. But back then I didn't know that, and so little by little, I got to the point of being okay with it and then integrating it. And yeah,
yeah,
and just got to a more even keel when
mm,
feeling that. But I think it's one of those things that something in our human nature repels, that when we feel needy. And so we really have to talk to ourselves about this is okay. This is how Allah created you. Allah's there to meet our needs.
right,
If we weren't needy, then we would think we're God, and that's messed up.
right,
So I agree. I think it's a really important piece. And in teaching, I find it's one of the hardest pieces to teach. People have as much trouble with it as I did.
mm,
It's like, needy, are you kidding me? That's horrible. We are not supposed to have needs,
mm,
but those unmet needs drive so much of what's happening in our thoughts and in our words and in our actions. If we don't look at if we don't look at our neediness, we're never going to get the literacy about unmet needs and what to do about it and to
right,
turn it to Allah. So
right,
I just, all of that is such a big chunk of our journey, our spiritual journey to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing up the word. Yeah.
Thank you. I'd also like to go back to one of the ideas from your spiritual story was about relationships to others being informed by the idea of the unity. Um, and so I'm curious how your perception of the idea of unity, in Arabic, the word Tawhid, excuse me, but I'm wondering how your both perception of this idea of unity in Islam has changed over time, and also how your experience of it has changed over time.
Oh, wow. You're really good at this, Habib. Yeah. So before, when I was first introduced to it in the late 70s and early 80s, um, I mean, we were saying La ilaha illallah, and I understood the concept, but I don't think I tasted it at that time. I don't think, for whatever reason, I wasn't ready. I didn't taste it. I knew we were aiming for it, but on a human level, I knew. So it to me, it means different things at different levels of consciousness or in different worlds, let's say,
Mhm.
different realms of reality. So at the highest level, I don't think I had any concept. What I was trying for was here in this material plane, living
Mhm.
in a spiritual community with people, some of whom were easy and some of whom were literally crazy. And spiritual communities can draw in all kinds of people who are seeking refuge. So it can be really hard if you don't vet them. And in those days, we weren't.
Mhm.
So I would be working side by side with somebody in the garden. I was the head gardener, and this person was lying and he was stealing the corn and he lied to me. And I was furious because I was in charge of the garden. I was feeding my brothers and sisters in the community from it as best as we could. And, and I didn't have teenagers by then. So I hadn't yet had the experience of people looking me in the eye and lying. When my
Mhm.
kids became teenagers, I had that experience and I learned about it. So, anyway, it drove me nuts and it made me hate him.
Mhm.
And I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I was, I think, immature. And yet, when we would do our spiritual practice as a group on Thursday and Sunday nights, and I'd look into his eyes, I could love him.
Mhm.
So I was aware of these two levels or two parts, or these days they call them parts, two realities.
Yeah.
And it didn't necessarily change the daily stuff with him
Mhm.
at that time in my life. It didn't integrate or bleed into the daily life thing, because for me it was like he was two people, and I could see his beauty on Sunday and Thursday nights looking into his eyes, and during the weekdays I was just like, man, what is wrong with you? I wanted to shake him.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things about him. So that was then.
Mhm.
Over time, it has changed a lot. And I want to mention Hajj. As a teacher of peacemaking, one of the things CD drilled in me that is a main core of foundation of our curriculum is we are all one family,
Mhm.
brothers and sisters under one mother and father and one God. And that I make a really big deal of that in the peacemaking program. And I've worked to have that be my reality over the years, over the decades. And my goal, my wish, my desire is for our students to have that be at least the beginning of the reality. In 22 months, it's not enough time, but, to at least start to accept it and to aim for it. And Hajj, there you are with, as you know, millions of people from all over the world. You
Yeah.
hear all these different languages. Some of the groups are wearing the same fabric. So, they're all from that tribe in Africa. They're all together. They're speaking French. So I could identify that. And I'm just like saying to myself over and over, we are all one family. All these people, the homeless ones, the ones who have a room to stay in, the ones who are pushing and shoving people, the ones who aren't, the women that I'm sharing my prayer rug with in Medina at the Mosque of the Prophet Islam. And then I turn to hug her at the end of Salat, but she doesn't know that the way we Sufis do. So she doesn't respond, or it's like awkward,
Sure.
and I'm just over and over all the time. These are my brothers and sisters. This is my family.
Mm.
And it was kind of a koan. It was kind of a mystery. It was a goal I was striving for. There were many moments where I felt it.
Mhm.
That experience is so many things, obviously, as you know. That was just one of the things that it was. So that. And then over time, because of peacemaking, and now because of our society so divided, our tariqa divided, small sub communities in our tariqa divided, the world divided, Asheville, North Carolina, where I lived, it's like division is everywhere. And so the last years, I'm just like, how do I do this a lot? Because I do stand for something. There is a side of values that's real in me that I feel passionate about. But what do I do about all this diversity? That's
Mhm.
how we name it in peacemaking. It's diversity. It's the differences between people. And where I am now is that I can hold all of it in my heart, near
Mhm.
and far, like the Tariqa, the sub communities in the Tariqa, the people and different sides within that body, the ones out there in Asheville, the ones out there in the world. It doesn't mean I agree with all of them at all. And I work for what I believe in actively, but
Right.
my heart is around it all.
Mm.
I've asked a lot for help, not to go like this side to side, but to just really please help me to surround it all. That doesn't mean I can say that I love the ones that I don't vote totally disagree with. That wouldn't be real. I don't feel love for them. I do feel compassion, and I do feel like I see some of what's behind and behind.
Mhm.
And I feel like I see wounding. That doesn't mean I'm complicit, complacent, or any of that. It just means that I feel like I see more of the picture around a person or a group than I used to see. And that helps me to hold it. But again, it doesn't stop me from action for what's important to me. And then on the other level, on the beyond the mulk level, the inner lahut level, the highest world, the world of the unity, um, learning physics, quantum physics, a long time ago really helps me with that, because I think that the unified field is a really good way of understanding the
Mhm.
unity at the highest levels in the absolute. And
Mhm.
it's a good way of talking about it to people who know about the unified field.
Mhm.
And and I feel like in terms of tasting and being with it, it's off and on for me. It's not a steady state.
Right.
Um, on the outer, but when I go in enough, in behind and behind inside enough, I feel like there's enough good hair days, as what dude would say, that I can be with that presence
Mm.
pretty ongoing. But I
Mm.
can't say that all my days, even if I go in deeply, I
Yeah.
can't always access it. So again, it's a wave action, it's oscillating. But I think over time in the oscillation between Jamal and Jamal, what I've noticed, he talks about this somewhere in the soul stations, the poles have come closer and closer together. So before it was like a law, not a law, and the poles were way apart in my experience. not in
Mm-hmm.
my knowledge, but in my experience. Over time with the journey, they've become, I'm bringing my hands in. And there
Mm-hmm.
was a time, and it was when we were all in Pope Valley, I remember when it was like this for me, like the oscillation was just a vibration. It wasn't this way, buffeted back and forth between. And then
Mm-hmm.
at a certain point, that oscillation went like that.
Oh,
And then I got it. It's like I got the Jalal Jamal thing and the vis-a-vis the unity, not just in my understanding, but like vibration. It's like the vibration. It stopped oscillating and it became this still.
mm-hmm.
I guess you could call it a still point or something. So
Mm-hmm.
I can access that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And just like you said before, I don't always remember to,
Yeah.
but it's always there.
Yeah.
So that's an evolution of those things at least those two levels. And
Yeah.
in relationship, like with Wadud, oh my God. So we've been together 26. We've been married 57 years. Got married in 69. And those 57 years have been at least 3 or 4 lifetimes. I mean, there's 2 lifetimes before children, after children. But then within each of those, there's subsets. So the
Right.
beginning, it was like this. We fought a lot. We were super different.
Mm.
I mean, really different. I mean, even now we look at how we were then and wonder, how did we end up even getting together, let alone staying together? We were opposite on every level. He was an atheist, and I was already a mystic. He was a Republican. I was not just a Democrat, I was way lefty from my family. And it's just so many things. Vietnam War was a huge thing in my life. He was pretty clueless.
Yeah.
Anyway, something, I don't know what happened. It was an Allah deal, but in those first uh 7 or 8 years, it was very tumultuous. We split up a few times. We had huge
Mm.
fights that would spill out in the street late at night, me in my
Mm.
nightgown yelling and screaming. I mean, it was like that. And then the first Sufism came in 77. That really started helping because, like I said, suddenly the soul became a reality to me. So his soul was a reality. So there's his soul, and then there's the personality and all the stuff that I didn't like. But then there's the soul. And you can't, when you see a soul, you can't not like it. Every soul is beautiful, I think, or at least most of them. So anyway, there was those two. So that was the beginning of seeing that there's more than what meets the eye in
Yeah.
everybody, including him, and just the love really starting to blossom. And then there was the
Mm.
teachings that really helped us begin to know what love was, what we were aiming for, and then having children. And just there were so many things that happened. And then in the late 90s, when we met Sidi, that's when, without even realizing it was happening, it's like our beings were just like knitted together. Oh, and Sidi early on gave us an assignment. This is when he was still meeting everybody at our house, the lake house, before he was meeting everybody planned. He
Yeah.
assigned us to only say yes to each other, only yes for 3 weeks. And that was really hard for me because I'm very rebellious and
Mm.
very, autonomous. And we took it on. And I don't know if it was as hard for Wadrid as it was for me, but it was really hard for me. But three
Mm.
weeks was long enough to give me a whole new reality,
Mm.
and that I had a choice. Before that, I didn't think I had a choice. I would just say no when that's what I thought was my reality.
Yeah.
So that was really an amazing practice. And I know other couples that he gave that to for a week. I don't give it to us for 3, but I assume it's because I was such a hard nut to crack. But
Oh,
it really changed things in our and that wasn't the only thing. And there was much more change needed, and there was still upheaval from then on. But at this point,
yeah.
it's just like this. There's almost no upheaval. There's some differences in the way we see things, But at the same time, there's a very present awareness that that's not the most important thing in the world. Like right now, we're going to be going up to the front of Peace to lead a Zawiya. And
Mm,
there's some things that have come up, sort of like some roadblocks about it. And we're negotiating our different ways of seeing those and what to do about it. But it doesn't puncture into the fabric of the two
mm,
of us.
mhm,
And you know that line in CD, and God comes to love himself alone. Like
mm,
that's a reality for us often. That's
mm,
in the Secret of the Love of God chapter, the Music of the Soul. So that's another level of the unity that is a
mm.
huge gift. I mean, I don't feel like we earned it or anything. It just was
Yeah,
given.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's hard for our kids because, you know, as they became more older, more mature, more aware, they saw that happening and they were like, well, that's what I want in my relationship. And that's not where we started. We tell them all the time, you
right.
know, but it's hard not to want this, you know, instant, just add water. And it's hard work and a
Yes.
lot of teaching and a lot of practice and learning communication and fighting fair and learning about power. And there were just so many things that went into where we are now. And we've
Yeah.
both been willing to learn and do the work,
Mm,
you know, but we've split up a few times, we've come close and not recently, but you know, it was like that. And people don't realize, they look at us now and they don't realize that we're regular people. And this journey has been hard, you know,
yeah,
not
yeah,
anymore, but it was.
yeah.
So I feel like Allah is always going to give you your challenges in one place or another, like if it's health or money or relationship or all three. And our relationship was the big challenge for a long time. And then as we started doing better, then the kids, as once they weren't a challenge at all till they hit 14 and 15. And then the shit hit the fan. And that was the big challenge then for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for giving that um, forthcoming, that honest retelling of how unity connected to your relationship, your marriage with Wadud, and the transformation of that over time. I, speaking of time, I'm looking at the clock and noticing that we are about out of time. But I want to come back to spirituality, unity, these sort of key words that coming up. Unity and your passions for social justice, your passion
Yeah.
for anti-racism, your passion for action,
Yeah.
not just an idea, but an action in the world. So, can you speak to this connection, connecting spirituality and the teaching of the unity and your passion for social justice and your passion for anti-racism, excuse me, anti-racism and your passion for acting in the world that is an action that comes from that idea of unity or action that comes from your experience of spirituality, what spirituality means to you, and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. There's two prongs. One is DNA, I think. My mother, my parents, but especially my mother, was a real leader in activism, social justice.
Mm,
Family time was marching against the Vietnam War for peace. My father was a Veterans for Peace, a very early joiner of that.
mm,
And then marching with Martin Luther King and civil rights. And so those were like really big values. So I inherited it for one thing.
mm,
And then the other side of it is Sidi, our teacher, our sheikh from Jerusalem, you know, set such an example of standing up for peace and justice. You know, we know what he did with the Pope on the Haram at Al Aqsa Mosque when he said, you know, you apologized to the Jewish people for the Inquisition, but you never apologized to my people, the Muslims. And the Pope ended up crying in his arms. And there's a photo of that.
mm,
You know, he was just undaunted. And then he was told us he was in jail in Saudi 7 times and we know that he ripped up that a Saudi prince was meeting with him in Al-Aqsa, and they were standing under the tile dome there, and the prince gave him a check for $1 million to redo the tile work there because he was one of the main people in charge of stuff like that. And he tore up the check in front of him and said, "I don't want your dirty money." Um, those are some things that stand out for me about him. And it so happened that my mom would be visiting us at the lake house where we lived when Sidi was still staying there and teaching there. And 2 times she was there when he came to teach.
Mm.
And she was an atheist. And she kind of looked askance at our even having a spiritual teacher. I mean, she had a lot of judgments about our path and everything.
Yeah.
But she and Sidi were the oldest people in the house. So they were often at the breakfast table at the same time when everybody else was asleep. And I learned much later that they would talk about social justice stuff. And
Mm.
Sidi could tell, of course, he could tell that was a thing you could talk to my mom about.
Yeah.
And so one time he told me, "Your mother is very holy, very holy." And I'm like, "What?" She's an atheist. I didn't say that to him, but inside I'm thinking, what is, I can't see this Allah. What's he talking about? And little by little over time, I realized that from his point of view, people that
Yeah.
stick their necks out for the good and the just and our brothers and sisters and peace, that's a kind of holiness for him.
Yeah.
So those two prongs, and then being this age, there's something, I mean, it's always been important to me, but there have been pockets of time in my life when I had young children and I was a working mother and I was the head of a school that I helped start. I was just busy and exhausted, so
Yeah.
I kind of knew what was going on in the world, but I wasn't activist, and I was a working mother for my kids almost their whole life, full time. So that's busy, and then spiritual communities, and that's very busy too. So so now in the last, I don't know, maybe 8 years, I feel like I'm going back to the time in my life when I was young, a teenager, family time on the line, marching and everything, and then my college years and after, before children, where I was out there. I think the spiritual path kind of overshadowed the activism for a while,
Mm-hmm.
not just because of not time, but somehow, I don't know, that's just a thing you do inside. You sort of like, well, this is the way I'm doing it now. And now, like you're saying, they've come together, and it's such a strong fire inside of me. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to figure out, given my age and my bandwidth, what can I do? And so I'm constantly prioritizing. And also, what is it safe enough to do? I think everything I'm doing could be unsafe. And that scares me.
Yeah.
So I don't ask that question all the time. But what do I have time to do? What do I have himma, desire, or longing to do? And so I just do what I can. And I don't want to have regrets when I die, any. And so I'm trying to handle that, whether it's with people or my work or social justice or whatever. I'm just trying to, because I feel like I could die any day. So I'm just trying to look and say, I don't want to die regretting that I didn't do what I could at a certain time.
Yeah.
That bothers me.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's hard to think about Allah and what's Allah think about what I'm doing, or what's Allah going to do with me after this life, because I have no idea. Really, I don't make any assumptions. But it's easy for me to feel seedy, which I do every once in a while. And it's kind of my litmus test. I go, okay, seedy, is this okay? And if I feel a really strong yes coming from deep inside, then, and I remember during one of the elections, a couple of the presidential elections, um, like the first Obama, we asked Sidi, because we knew that for him, you don't vote. You are accountable to Allah for your vote. So you don't vote for anybody that's not righteous, let's say. So
Right.
in the first Obama, we asked him, and he said, I don't know if you remember, he would go, like this. It's okay, which doesn't mean yes. It means like Wadud says that's plan B. Because yes was like, yes,
Yeah.
it's okay. So we could vote for him in the first election. Second election, oh, and at that, as we were getting towards the second election, CD said publicly, all the leaders in the world are with the shaitan,
Yeah.
all. And we're like, oh my God, here's coming the second election. What do we do?
Yeah.
And we just had to really decide. And we did vote. Probably some didn't, I don't know, but we did, knowing that we're going to, I don't see that he's with the shaitan, but CD does. And I'm just going to hold my nose and do it and hope for the best with Allah. And, since then, it's so hard to know, but that's just one of the yardsticks that CD gave us, and here we are in this world. I mean, he said in terms of mortgage and paying interest, he was like, you're in a country where that's the way they do it. So you do have to do it. So minimize how much you partake of interest.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's kind of like that with the voting. Yeah, that's
Thank you. And thank you for that perspective. It's not a perspective that many people can relate to, that there's a level of responsibility around if we vote, that there's a level of responsibility for the actions of the person that we voted for. And
yes.
that's a hard thing for many people to swallow. Um, well,
That's where paradox comes in again
yeah, yeah,
and compromise. And my mother was a history teacher, and she was just like, politics is the art of the possible. You know,
yeah,
see, compromised on some things. I think
yeah.
in some ways. But of course, everything he did was probably guided by Allah. So he had that direct line.
Yes, he had more clarity, I
He
think.
had 800 number direct, as he used to say. He had more
Yeah,
clarity.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
thank you so much for this conversation. I appreciate
you. Habib.
it. Yeah.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it too.
Alhamdulillah. And thank you to all listeners for joining us on Beyond Names. Before you go, if you would please just pause and take one breath and reflect for just a moment on what stays with you from this conversation. I I really hope for the world that we all might realize in our minds and our bodies and our hearts that we are one family and that we might act from that knowledge that we are one family and that we're all brothers and sisters in humanity. So thank you for sharing that as the foundation of peace building. May
Thank you
something.
for what you're doing for the world, Habib, through your interviews. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
I love your come from, as they say.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. All right.
May something you heard today help you reconnect with the light in your own heart. May you grow in compassion, clarity, and courage. May you find your way again and again back home to the divine, however you name it. If today's conversation speaks to you, please like, share, and comment on this episode. And please follow and subscribe to Beyond Names. To make an appointment with me, please visit habibboerger.com. Until next time, may you be light. May you consciously participate in growing your light, and may you share your light. Peace be with you.
Thank you.